Hello and welcome back to Hadoop Exam Learning Resources. In this session, we will discuss about implementation of the domain-driven design, how to find bounded context, entities, aggregate routes, or what all possible ways we can use it. And we will discuss the very popular method is event storming, which is one of the most popular way of finding out this. So let's discuss this and try to find it out how we can do this. So event storming. Please note that there are other methods like event sourcing, CQRS, event storming. These all are different. They are not same thing. In previous days or older days when you were discussing with the domain expert, you generally use the activity diagram or something like that UML use case diagram kind of thing you would be using to and sequence diagram and ER diagram while to basically find out this kind of stuff. So this is nowadays nobody use much of that, still being used but not much of that, and people may or may not want to use it, correct? It's individual choice. While discussion with domain expert, these are the not a good approach. If you want to fetch much more information from the domain expert, then use event storming. That's one example. Event storming is an exercise for creating domain models for a strategic design, correct? So this is event storming is for the finding out the strategic design tools. You remember ubiquitous language, bounded context, and uh, model you would be finding out using this. The domain and subdomain you would be unbounded context. So this line doesn't make any sense. Let me remove here. Now run event storming as a workshop. So generally depend on your project size, how big is the domain. So you can have a 3 to 5 days workshop which where all the your senior developer or your facilitator which is running this event and domain expert can come together and do this entire workshop. They can run it and come out with the this is sequence of events which we will discuss basically. But as part of event stop, you would be doing this exercise in a one big room basically based on the project size. You would be, so what you would be using sticky notes which you can define the color coding for them. So let's say for orange I want to use, for event I want to orange color, for command I will represent using blue color, aggregate I can represent using green color. If any rule is there, user have policies or views something, so this is I can color code it and I can use it. So events can be pushed like this. Create a reservation, so that is one event. When servers come and ask server to put your event in the sequence, he'll put this. Select table is another event. Then add customer information, welcome customer, take an order. So these are all events are happening in the sequence and they are putting it together, and this entire diagram would be created something like that. If you see like in it, if you see in the real-time world, this would be huge like horizontal strip would be created using the sticky notes, and that would be placed and pinned together, and this should be in a right order. So that would be, you would be implementing even branching out and kind of thing. Here I've shown a sequence, but it can be this. So based on that, we will try to find it out what should be the my bounded context, what should be my events, what should be my command, and kind of thing, correct? So this is more of a basically strategic tool. So you would be finding your what exactly as part of history, ubiquitous language, sorry, ubiquitous language you would be finding out, correct? And then you would be finding bounded context. That is what you would be finding out using this, correct? So now let's move further. So for example, this is a restaurant domain we are talking about. So my main domain is a restaurant domain which can have a bounded context, or you can say subdomain is a menu, order, cook, server, reservation, dishwasher, drink, plate, tape. These are all bounded context. If you can think of in this like a restaurant domain, we should try to decompose our large domain into subdomain. That is the main idea we want to create. So you can create subdomain by grouping related ideas, action, object, rules, like uh, etc. So here the using event storming we are trying to do find out, then subdomain would have a separate terms. So that is called ubiquitous language. So each would have the order has a different ubiquitous language, server would have a different ubiquitous language, dishwasher would have a different. This way you would have every bounded context would have its own ubiquitous language which you would be finding out. uh, Almost always some part exists in multiple domain. For example, customer, which may not be limited to reservation. It can be another subdomain as well. Part of this we have discussed previously as well, correct? So cross domain objects may or may not remain same across the subdomains. For example, detail required for customer object phone number is must, address is not needed. In reservation domain can be different in different subdomain, like delivery subdomain, phone number. So basically, which we have discussed previously, correct? Customer, when you talk about customer, so if you're talking about an order subdomain or bounded context or in reservation context, then we may not need the same information, or some additional information is needed. So that's where your ubiquitous language changes across this domain context to this bounded context to this bounded context, correct? So that is what you have to remember. So every bounded context has its own domain language. So and then bounded context is was one model plus ubiquitous language is your bounded context. Subdomain, you can say basically one bounded context is has a one subdomain, one-on-one relationship. I'm going a bit faster because we have already discussed this thing. I'm just repeating it. One bounded context you can implement in microservices as a single microservice. So restaurant and subdomain, hence while making the microservice, it is always a good idea to look for the bounded context and subdomain. We can break up single bounded context and create multiple microservices. That is possible. If required, you can do this. If you have from one bounded context to another bounded context, meaning changes, correct? Already discussed. For example, in case of restaurant, when we talk about the server, an order has very specific meaning, like order for a customer in a restaurant. But when you check for in inventory management, then order means an order between supplier and restaurant, which is very different. So that is what how meaning changes from one bounded context to another bounded context. Observe how the details of the model changes. For example, order, in case of order, price does not matter for the person in the kitchen, correct? You, the chef need the order detail, but he don't care about the price. Similarly, if price, if you are talking about customer bounded context, then price is very critical for him. So that is what the how the language is, all that needed. So information should not be provided to the kitchen price information, and this stuff changes based on what part of the business domain you are working on. There are no rules on, rather some guidelines needed to be followed how to find the bounded context. So one example is event storming, you can use it. Another example is human interaction, you can use it. Like human interaction, if you use it, if different areas are worked by different people, then use as a bounded context, like cook, server, chef. These are all your bounded contexts. You can use it when you talk about human interaction. Or ubiquitous language, if language or meaning of the language changes, that is different context. When one you, then you can define as a different context. Like when I'm talking about order, and here order means different, here order means difference, then certainly these are two different bounded contexts which I need to define is. Or unnecessary information, like for example, price is important for customer on an order but not for the kitchen. So that is another way to find out the bounded context. So this is one way of finding the bounded context. Another way is event storming, which we are going to discuss, and this is what we should try using event first domain driven design that places the focus on the activities or events that occur in the domain. For example, customer making a reservation. So here this is a subject, this is a verb, and this is an object here, correct? So server places an order, server is subject, places is a verb, and order is an object. Food is served, food is a subject, served is a verb, and this is a customer as a. So in this approach we can think of object as a my basically we can say like this can be a bounded context, then group these activities to find the logical system boundary, correct? Kind of thing. So that is based on the event storming. So you would ask your domain expert to put this event, and based on that you can define the various domain object here basically, correct? And important points to note, so these are all we have discussed. I'll not go through this, you can read it. There's nothing different. So we will define subject, verb, and object notation. So let's go here, and this is, and try to find it out, some example here. So host check current reservation status. So host is what exactly here? Subject. Check is what? Verb. Current is a modifier, so right now we can ignore it, and reservation is an object. So what I can say here, like I would say reservation is a bounded context here, and checks is a verb, so that can be a command, correct? Here this is a command. Host is a subject, so that can be any entity or value object. I can define it here. Similarly, host creates reservation for a customer. So here host is a subject, creates is a verb, this command, and reservation, correct? Here reservation can be a bounded context. Here customer, for customer it is creating, so you need to have a customer as a value object as well here. So now host sits customer with the reservation. So host here again a subject, sits as a command, customers is an object, and with the reservation. So it may be like you need to now decide like customer would be my bounded context or reservation my bounded context. So based on some your understanding, you can define it where do you want to put it. I selected customer, but it may not be necessary customer. It may go on the reservation side as well. So similarly for all this we have done is, so you can go through this and try to find it out and understand it like wow, how this event storming session is put. So here these events are placed by the all the domain expert. These events they have keep pasting on the board, and you and ask them to put in sequence and kind of thing. So I need to fit it in a single slide, so I have put it like this, but generally these are horizontally around all four walls of the room you are sitting, and they are putting it. So this is a very interactive session. This happens and you learn a lot about the business domain. So these are the 3 days session, 5 days workshop, even 2 weeks workshop, correct? This is size of the project that depend, or you can break into multiple subdomain, not subdomain, I would say, like department wise, and you can interact with the people separately. So that is what you can do this. So bounded context in our simple restaurant applications, we come out with the like these are my orders is one bounded context, reservation is another bounded context, payment, menu, customers. So based on this event, I'll come say okay, this is my all bounded context I'll be putting here is uh, and come out with this, and I will design my system like this, correct, with this bounded context, and they would have their own ubiquitous language for each domain they would be having. So example of order context, like if we talk about, so if we should translate ubiquitous language into code and maintain it, like some sample command order bounded context is open an order. This is a basically an command, a new order was opened, so basically an event here as an order, and order open is a basically an event it becomes, correct. Add menu item to an order, so menu item added to an order is an event, you passes order updated, basically, correct. So this kind of language you should maintain in your code as well. Assign a server to an order, so server is assigned to an order, this is an event, and server assigned to order, that is what you can create. So this way you should be able to define it. So your overall idea is to find a bounded context first in a strategic tool. So you work with the domain expert, go, I'm again repeating the same thing which we have discussed. So try to find it out, context maps, bounded context, ubiquitous language first, then define, fine tune your, because while doing this tactical tools, again you may not need the this domain expert kind of thing, but you can obviously validate because they all putting the events and commands together, and you are generating out of this, and you are fine tuning using the technical tools like domain activities, domain object, domain abstraction, what you needed. So that's all. Now almost we are done with the all concept and designing of the domain driven design, which every senior developer must know. It doesn't matter whether you are Java developer or C# developer or basically front end developer, correct. If you are senior developer, you must know the domain driven design nowadays, because microservice architecture is getting popular and it's already popular. So and domain driven design is becoming popular as because this make easy to develop your microservices architecture and a faster delivery and kind of thing, and organizations are looking for the senior architect who know the domain driven design, hexagon architecture, port adapter architecture, you can say onion architecture, CQRS architecture. These all things are being looked forward, so looking for. So please learn this, and especially design pattern, don't forget to learn the design pattern, which are you cannot avoid this. If you are an architect, you should know the design pattern. So that's all. Thank you and wish you all the best. I'm stopping now.